The Council of Unified Sentience gathered in their orbital station above Viridian Prime, and honestly, they looked pretty pleased with themselves. 12 species, 47 delegates, all nodding along as the final vote tallied up on the holographic display. Unanimous approval for the execution of one human criminal named Darian Hale. Now I should mention something important here. We'd been observing humanity for exactly 3 cycles since their little blue planet joined the galactic community, and in that time, we'd learned precisely nothing about what made them tick. Sure, we understood their biology, carbon-based, endoskeletal, prone to randomly leaking fluids when experiencing emotions, but their psychology, their culture, might as well have been trying to read Corthanian poetry while drunk on fermented kelp. Darian Hale was, by all accounts, a monster even by human standards. He'd orchestrated the theft of 14 cargo freighters carrying medical supplies destined for the Pleiadian colonies during their plague outbreak. 40,000 beings died because of his actions. The evidence was airtight, his trial conducted according to every protocol we'd established over millennia of civilized jurisprudence, and his sentence, death by molecular disintegration, was considered merciful compared to what some species proposed. The Krell ambassador, a being named Thoskar, whose species hadn't executed anyone in 4,000 years, actually voted in favor. That should have told us something right there, but hubris is apparently a universal constant. The execution was scheduled for 3 solar rotations later, broadcast across all Federation channels as a demonstration of justice and unity. We wanted everyone to see that the law applied equally, that not even the newest species got special treatment when their criminals threatened galactic stability. What we didn't account for, and really how could we, was Earth's response. The first indication came when Ambassador Keiko Tanaka requested an emergency session with the Council exactly 2 hours after the vote. Now, Tanaka was usually the picture of diplomatic composure. She'd navigated the tricky integration process with the kind of patience that made the Venetian monks look impulsive. But when she materialized on the council floor that day, something was different. Her face held that peculiar human expression we'd learned meant barely contained fury. Jaw tight, eyes hard, that little muscle twitching near her temple. "The vote is final, Ambassador," Council Chair Vormalik stated, his 3 vocal sacs resonating with absolute certainty. "Hale's crimes are beyond dispute. I'm not disputing his crimes," Tanaka replied, and her voice was so cold it could have flash-frozen methane. "I'm here to inform you that Earth officially requests custody of the prisoner for execution according to our own protocols." The chamber erupted in chittering, hooting, and harmonic disagreement. The Krell delegation's bioluminescent patches flashed in agitation, the Dravian observer's tentacles coiled defensively, and Vormalik's 3rd vocal sac produced that low thrumming sound that indicated deep skepticism. "That's highly irregular," he managed. "The sentence has been determined by a council that includes exactly 0 experts on human psychology, human law, or human culture," Tanaka interrupted, which was incredibly rude by galactic standards but apparently just Tuesday for humans. "You're about to execute a human being using methods that our species finds not only barbaric but fundamentally misguided. I'm offering you a compromise. Let us handle our own." Vormalik's central eye stalks swiveled toward the judiciary panel. "What does human law prescribe for such crimes?" "That depends on the jurisdiction," Tanaka admitted. "But in this case, under the Unified Earth Treaty that all nations signed during integration, the sentence would be life imprisonment with mandatory rehabilitation protocols." The laughter that erupted, and yes, even alien laughter sounds like mockery when you get enough species together, was idiotic. The concept of a rehabilitation for such a heinous criminal struck most of the assembly as either naive or actively insane. The Takari representative, a being named Sivarenth, whose species had been spacefaring for 6,000 years, actually had to grip his hover seat to keep from toppling over in amusement. "You want to teach him better," he wheezed through his translation device. "After he caused the deaths of 40,000 beings, we want to understand why he did it," Tanaka corrected, her expression never wavering. "And yes, determine if redemption is possible. It's what we do." "Request denied," Vormalik declared, and that was that. or so we thought. 3 rotations passed with unusual quiet from Earth. No protests, no diplomatic maneuvers, no strongly worded letters, just silence. We should have been suspicious, but honestly, we were too busy congratulating ourselves on handling the situation with such firm authority. The execution chamber on station terminus was prepared with all appropriate ceremony. Darian Hale was transported under maximum security, contained in a biostasis field that made escape impossible. I was there, observing for the archival records, and I have to say, Hale himself seemed remarkably calm for someone about to be unmade at the molecular level. He was younger than I expected, maybe 30 solar cycles in human years, with dark hair, sharp features, and eyes that held something our psychological analysis bots kept flagging as resigned acceptance, but felt more like anticipation. The viewing galleries filled with delegates, reporters, and observers from 70 different species. This was history, after all. The first execution of a human under galactic law. The symbolism mattered. Executor Prindal, a Korthanian whose species had performed this duty for centuries, approached the containment field with ritual precision. His 4 arms moved in the traditional gestures, while his vocoder intoned the ancient words of final judgment. Very dramatic, very proper, exactly by the book. That's when things got weird. The station's primary communication array suddenly blazed to life with an incoming transmission. Not just any transmission, but one using override codes that technically didn't exist in our security protocols. Every screen, every display, every holographic projector in the chamber switched to show the same image, a human male in what we'd learned was a military uniform, sitting behind a simple wooden desk with the blue and green sphere of Earth rotating slowly behind him. "I am Fleet Admiral Marcus Chen of the United Earth Defense Force," the human stated, his voice carrying that particular timbre that made our threat assessment algorithms start screaming. "On behalf of humanity, I regret to inform the Galactic Council that you have made a catastrophic error in judgment." Alex tried to shut down the transmission. Believe me, he tried. But whatever humans had done to hack our systems ran deeper than anyone thought possible. The image remained stable, crystal clear, while alarms started blaring throughout the station. "The human Darian Hale has committed crimes that we acknowledge and condemn," Chen continued, totally unbothered by the chaos he was causing. "However, he remains a citizen of Earth, and as such falls under our jurisdiction for sentencing. Your refusal to honor this legal reality has forced us to demonstrate why human criminal justice operates differently than yours." "This is an outrage," someone shouted. I think it was the Seldorian delegate. Though it's hard to tell when everyone's panicking simultaneously, Chen's expression didn't change. "Mr. Hale, please confirm your identity and status for the record." And here's where it got properly terrifying. The human in the execution chamber, still contained, still supposedly awaiting molecular disintegration, smiled. Not a scared smile, not a desperate smile, but the kind of expression you'd wear when you know the punchline to a joke nobody else has figured out yet. "Darian Hale, Sergeant First Class, Earth Defense Intelligence Division, Operative 6639 Alpha," he stated clearly. "Mission status, complete." The silence that followed could have suffocated entire ecosystems. "Excuse me?" Alex's voice came out strangled, which was impressive considering his species didn't technically have throats. "The individual you've been holding is indeed Darian Hale," Chen explained with the patience of someone explaining orbital mechanics to larvae. "But the crimes he committed were conducted under deep cover as part of a counterintelligence operation targeting the Syndicate of Free Traders, the actual criminal organization responsible for the cargo thefts. Your investigation, while thorough by your standards, completely missed the real criminals because you were so focused on the convenient human scapegoat they'd manufactured." "That's impossible," Executor Prindal whispered, his 4 arms frozen mid-gesture. "The evidence was planted, altered, and fabricated by professionals who've been evading galactic law enforcement for 2 centuries. Chen interrupted. "We would have shared this information sooner, but we needed to identify all members of the Syndicate first. They've been dismantled as of approximately 6 hours ago, with arrests occurring simultaneously across 47 systems." You're welcome. My recording devices captured the exact moment understanding crashed through the chamber like a kinetic strike. The Pleiadian representative, whose people had suffered most from the cargo thefts, went absolutely rigid. The Krell delegation's bioluminescence shifted through colors I'd never seen before, cycling through what I later learned corresponded to horror, humiliation, and existential dread. You infiltrated a criminal syndicate, Sivaranth said slowly. Let them frame your operative for mass murder. Allowed us to capture, try, and sentence him to death, and waited until literally the last possible moment to reveal the truth. Why? Chen's smile was all teeth. And I distinctly remember thinking that humans must have evolved from ambush predators, because that expression triggered every flight instinct my species possessed. 2 reasons, he stated, holding up fingers to count. First, we needed absolute proof of syndicate operations, which required letting them think they'd succeeded in framing Hale. They got sloppy when they felt safe. Second, and this is the important one, we needed to demonstrate exactly what happens when you ignore human legal sovereignty. This is insane, someone muttered. And honestly, accurate. This is proportional response, Chen corrected. You attempted to execute an innocent human operative without conducting due diligence, without consulting Earth's legal experts, and without acknowledging our repeated requests for custody. You were so convinced of your superior galactic wisdom that you couldn't conceive we might know something you didn't. Tanaka appeared next to Chen in the transmission, and the look on her face suggested she'd been aware of this entire operation from the start. The Galactic Council has repeatedly treated humanity as inexperienced children who need education in proper civilization, she stated, her diplomatic mask completely gone now. We've tolerated the condescension, the assumptions, the casual dismissal of our legal traditions, because we understood integration takes time. But this, she gestured at the execution chamber, this crosses a line. Vormalix's eye stalks drooped in what I recognized as his species' version of devastation. We were following established protocols. Your protocols almost murdered an innocent man conducting legitimate law enforcement operations, Chen snapped. How many other those have your established protocols resulted in miscarriages of justice, because you couldn't be bothered to understand the species you're supposedly helping integrate? Nobody had an answer for that, mainly because we were all frantically reviewing past cases and trying very hard not to think about the implications. The biostasis field around Hale dissolved, and he stepped out casually, stretching like he'd just woken from a nap rather than nearly being executed. For what it's worth, he called out to the chamber. You folks run a really impressive station here. Security's pretty good. Took our tech teams almost 2 full days to completely compromise. The casual admission that Earth had infiltrated every system on our most secure station hit like a nova shockwave. Prindal actually dropped his ceremonial execution staff, which clattered against the deck plating with a sound that echoed far too loudly in the stunned silence. 2 days? Security Chief Kavrash choked out, his mandibles clicking in distress. Our systems are quantum encrypted with 7-dimensional recursive algorithms. Yeah, about that, Hale interrupted, brushing imaginary dust off his uniform. Your encryption is actually pretty brilliant, if you're trying to stop anyone who thinks in 3 spatial dimensions. Unfortunately for you, humans got really creative with cryptography during our pre-integration wars. Plus, your security protocols assume rational actors following logical patterns. We're not super big on either of those things when we're motivated. Chen's image shifted, clearly accessing data in real time. As we speak, we're transmitting full documentation of syndicate operations to all council members, including the names of 6 sitting delegates who were accepting bribes to delay enforcement actions. We've also prepared a comprehensive report on security vulnerabilities in 17 major Federation stations, free of charge, naturally, as a gesture of goodwill. Goodwill? Sivaranth's voice cracked. You've just demonstrated that you can compromise our most vital infrastructure whenever you choose. Exactly, Tanaka confirmed, and the satisfaction in her voice was unmistakable. Now you understand the position we've been in since integration. You have technology we're still learning, weapons we can't yet manufacture, and a 3,000-year head start on space colonization. We've been the vulnerable ones this entire time, and yet somehow we managed not to execute any of your citizens without proper investigation." Vormalix's color had shifted to something I'd never seen before. A sort of grayish purple that the xenobiologists would later classify as profound shame, mixed with respect. His central eye stalk focused on Hale with uncomfortable intensity. "Young human, you knowingly allowed yourself to be sentenced to death. Why?" Hale shrugged, the gesture carrying more weight than it should. "Because someone had to show you that humans aren't simple, we're not naive, and we're definitely not weak. You needed to understand that our approach to justice, rehabilitation over retribution, investigation over assumption, comes from strength, not stupidity. Also, my commanding officers promised me a truly spectacular bonus if I pulled this off, so there's—" "You could have died," the Pleiadian representative whispered, her voice harmonics conveying genuine horror. "If we had activated the disintegration sequence even seconds earlier—" "Yeah, that was the part that made me really earn that bonus," Hale admitted with a grin that was probably meant to be reassuring but mostly just looked unhinged. "But we calculated the timing pretty carefully. Admiral Chen's not big on losing operatives to badly planned operations." Chen's expression softened slightly. Sergeant Hale volunteered for this mission knowing the risks. Every step was his choice. That's another thing you need to understand about humans. We don't force our people into danger, but when we ask for volunteers to do something insane and necessary, we generally get more applicants than we can use. I watched Kavrosh pull up security footage on his personal display, his posture growing more defeated with each passing second. "They've been in our systems since before the trial even concluded. Everything. Communication logs, security feeds, environmental controls, even the execution chamber's molecular disintegrators. They could have triggered a station-wide emergency evacuation or just shut down life support to the council chambers whenever they wanted. But we didn't," Tanaka pointed out gently. "Because unlike some species, we don't abuse power just because we have it. We could have embarrassed you quietly, leaked the evidence anonymously, or just extracted Sergeant Hale through a dozen different covert methods. Instead, we're being very loud and very public about this because the lesson is too important to deliver subtly." Thassa's Kar, the Krell ambassador who'd voted for execution, rose slowly from his seat. His bioluminescent patches had dimmed to almost nothing, a sign of deep personal shame in his species. "Ambassador Tanaka, on behalf of my delegation, I offer our most sincere apologies. We failed in our fundamental duty to ensure justice rather than expediency." This is his translation device struggled with whatever emotion he was expressing. "This is a darkness we will carry." "We don't want you to carry darkness," Tanaka replied, her voice losing some of its edge. "We want you to do better. All of you. The galaxy is big enough and complicated enough that no single species has all the answers. You've been running things your way for millennia, and honestly, you've done pretty well. But you need to accept that humanity might occasionally know things you don't, especially about humans." Vormalix's vocal sacs produced a sound I'd never heard before, something between a sigh and a ritual lamentation. "What do you want from us, Ambassador?" "First, immediate release and full exoneration for Sergeant Hale, with official apologies issued to Earth and all affected fatalities," Tanaka listed, counting on her fingers just as Chen had. "Second, complete overhaul of judicial protocols to require consultation with a defendant's species of origin before sentencing in all capital cases. Third, formal recognition that each member species maintains primary jurisdiction over its own citizens, with the Council serving as arbitrator only when explicitly requested. And fourth," she paused for effect, "you start actually listening when we tell you something about humanity instead of assuming we're too primitive to understand galactic reality." "That fourth one's the most important," Hale added cheerfully, having apparently decided he was fully part of this negotiation now. "Like I've been watching council proceedings for months during deep cover prep, and you folks talk about humans like we're adorable puppies who just learned to walk upright. It's kind of annoying when you're a species that went from wooden boats to faster-than-light travel in about 400 years. Severanth made a sound that might have been laughter or crying. His species did both identically. 400 years. The Tekari needed 6,000 just to develop reliable orbital mechanics. Different approaches, different timelines, Chen said. Diplomatically, we're not claiming superiority, just requesting respect. Humanity has made some catastrophic mistakes in our history, but we've also developed some genuinely useful approaches to complex problems. Criminal justice is one of them. We figured out centuries ago that execution is usually the lazy option, that understanding why someone commits crimes tells you more about preventing future crimes than just eliminating the criminal ever could. Vormalix was reviewing something on his own display, his eye stalks moving in patterns I'd learned indicated intense concentration. Your report on the syndicate operations, extraordinarily thorough. You've documented transaction records going back 40 standard cycles, identified over 300 operatives across 70 systems, and traced financial networks through jurisdictions we didn't even know existed. We're pretty good at the detective work, Hale confirmed. Turns out when you spend a few thousand years murdering each other over increasingly stupid reasons before figuring out cooperation, you get really skilled at tracking down people who don't want to be found. It's like a species-wide hobby at this point. The Dravian observer, who'd been silent throughout the entire debacle, finally spoke up. Her species was known for philosophical contemplation, rarely engaging in council debates, so when she did contribute it generally meant something significant. I believe I understand now why the human concept of rehabilitation disturbs us so deeply. It requires acknowledging that we are all capable of becoming what we most despise, that the difference between justice and cruelty is often just perspective and circumstance. It's much easier to believe in irredeemable evil. Exactly, Tanaka said, something like respect flickering across her features. Hale here committed acts that, without context, absolutely deserved punishment. He stole medical supplies during a plague crisis. That's monstrous. But the context that he was tracking the actual thieves, that those supplies were already compromised and would have killed rather than cured, that he was risking his life to save future victims, completely changes the moral calculus. Your protocols don't account for that kind of complexity, because you've engineered societies where such complexity rarely occurs, whereas human society is apparently just complexity all the way down. Kavrosh muttered, still staring at his security reports with the expression of someone reconsidering every life choice. You're catching on, Chen said with approval. So here's what happens next. We're going to work together on redesigning judicial protocols that actually account for species-specific psychology. We're going to share our counterintelligence methodologies, so the syndicate doesn't just regroup under new management. And you're going to stop treating humanity like we're one disaster away from nuking ourselves back to the Stone Age. Are you not? Sivaranth asked, and he genuinely seemed curious rather than insulting. Oh, we totally are, Hale laughed, but that's our problem to manage, not yours to condescend about. We've had planet-destroying weapons for 2 centuries, and managed not to use them despite some really tempting provocations. Give us a little credit. The vote to accept Earth's terms was unanimous, though this time the atmosphere was decidedly different from the confident certainty that had marked Hale's execution approval. Delegates approached Tanaka afterward, some offering personal apologies, others asking technical questions about human legal philosophy, and more than a few requesting detailed brief beams on Earth's intelligence capabilities, with the nervous energy of people who'd just realized they'd been playing chess against someone who could see the entire board. I followed Hale as he left the chamber, partly for the archives and partly because I'd never seen someone walk away from their own execution before. He moved with easy confidence, nodding to delegates who'd voted to kill him just hours earlier, apparently harboring no resentment whatsoever. Sergeant Hale, I called out, my translation device converting my harmonic speech into something humans could process. A question for the historical record. Were you afraid? He paused, considering this with actual seriousness. Terrified, honestly. But fear is just information. It tells you something matters enough to be scared of losing it. The trick is not letting fear make your decisions for you. Your species seems remarkably comfortable with risk. We really aren't, he corrected. We've just had to get good at functioning through fear because our entire evolutionary history was basically a highlight reel of things trying to kill us. Every instinct we have screams at us to find safety and never leave it, which is exactly why we're compelled to do the opposite. We're contrary like that. 3 lunar cycles later, the reformed judicial protocols were implemented across all Federation systems. The Syndicate's dissolution freed up trade routes that had been compromised for decades, and the subsequent investigation revealed systemic corruption that had infected institutions we'd assumed were beyond reproach. Dozens of species came forward with cases they'd felt were mishandled under the old system, and the tribunals stayed busy for years sorting through the mess. Darian Hale received multiple medals from various governments, was promoted twice, and apparently used his bonus to fund a scholarship program for students studying xenopsychology. Ambassador Tanaka negotiated humanity's elevation to full council status, complete with voting rights and committee assignments in record time. As for me, I learned something that changed how I approached every archive entry afterward. Confidence born from millennia of success can be the most dangerous kind of ignorance, especially when you encounter someone who's spent their entire existence learning from catastrophic failure. The humans had a saying they liked to repeat during integration negotiations, something about old dogs and new tricks. We dismissed it as primitive wisdom, not understanding that they were trying to warn us about our own ossification. They weren't the old dogs in that scenario, we were. And the trick they taught us, painful as the lesson was, might have saved the Federation from collapsing under its own assumptions. So yeah, the galaxy wasn't ready for what happened after Darian Hale's execution was approved, but maybe that was exactly the point. Sometimes the best teacher is the one who shows you everything you thought you knew was incomplete at best and dangerous at worst. Humanity didn't ask to join the Galactic community as supplicants seeking approval. They arrived as equals demanding respect, and they were willing to bet one man's life to prove they'd earned it. The really terrifying part: they won that bet, and we're all still trying to figure out what other impossible wagers they're willing to make.